state witness in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial, Sergeant Thabo Mosia, says he's surprised that former police Brigadier Johan Ndlovu distanced himself from working with him at the crime scene where Meyiwa was shot. Mosia will be back in the witness box at the High Court in Pretoria this morning. This is where 5 men are on trial for allegedly killing the star goalie. Our reporter Chriselda Lewis covering this story for us. She is there. She's in the courtroom as we cross to her. So, Chriselda, let's get a bit of a recap. How was yesterday? What happened? What's happened so far?
Well, Ian, first of all, we're expecting Sergeant Thabo Mosia, who is the forensic detective, to continue facing tough questions this morning as cross-examination continues by Advocate Zandile Mshololo. And indeed, yesterday, a number of contradictions that were picked up by Advocate Zandile Mshololo in terms of what he previously told this court and what Brigadier Johan Ndlovu, who was one of the first police officers to arrive at the scene, had basically deposed in a statement. You would recall, much prior to that statement being read out here in court and cross-examination getting underway, an application was brought by Advocate Zandile Mshololo in which she wanted this statement by Brigadier Johan Ndlovu to be read out in court. You would recall that Ndlovu passed away just shortly before the trial had gotten underway. So there had been argument about whether the statement will be allowed to be read into the record and whether a cross-examination could commence of Thabo Mosia based on that statement by Advocate Zandile Mshololo. But after the court had allowed it, saying they believed it would be in the interest of justice for it to be read in court, what we first saw was some of the contradictions that Advocate Zandile Mshololo had also based the argument in that application on, which is said there were a number of contradictions in the testimony that Mosia had previously given this court and that statement by Brigadier Ndlovu. First of all, you would recall that Thabo Mosia had basically told this court that when Brigadier Ndlovu had called him, he did not give him the address of the crime scene where Senzo Meyiwa had been killed, and that is why he had started at the hospital where it's believed Senzo Meyiwa was declared dead. But in the statement deposed by Ndlovu, he says that he had given Mosia the address. That's the first contradiction that we're seeing here. Secondly, to that, you would know that Mosia had basically said at some point he had handed over the crime scene to Brigadier Ndlovu, but in stark contrast, in the statement, he does not say that he assisted Mosia at all at the scene. In fact, he says he did not show him any of the exhibits or where to take photographs of the scene. This is in contrast to what Mosia previously told this court. So what Advocate Zandile Mshololo essentially was trying to do was to test the credibility of the testimony that Mosia had previously told this court versus the statement that was deposed by Brigadier Johan Ndlovu. Another aspect as well is that the crime scene report, you would recall that Mosia contends he was assisted by Ndlovu at the crime scene. He was showed where to take photographs and basically taken through the scene, given the fact that Mosia says when he arrived at the crime scene, Ndlovu had already been there. So he was also asked why there had not been a signature of Ndlovu on the crime scene report, which would basically corroborate the fact that Mosia contends in this courtroom that he was assisted at the crime scene by Brigadier Johan Ndlovu. He basically said there's nowhere on that report where there would be space for a signature. So what we're seeing here is the testimony of Thabo Mosia, Advocate Zandile Mshololo trying to poke holes in it and to test his credibility, to basically say that what he gave as testimony inside this court was not full fact. Remember, part of what Advocate Zandile Mshololo, in her argument when she brought the application for the statement to be read in court, she basically said that she would want to highlight some of those contradictions, and certainly it seems like she was quite successful in doing so, given that she'd highlighted some of those contradictions versus what Mosia had told this court and what Brigadier Johan Ndlovu had deposed in that statement.
Chriselda, have you got a sense that we're getting somewhere? I mean, it's still, the speed or lack thereof of the trial is frustrating many. But I mean, now that we're back, are you seeing that we're progressing more? I mean, this has been stalled for so long. I know we're still on the first witness, and now we, are going on about these affidavits. But let's talk. Are you getting a sense that we're moving a little bit further? Are we finding out a bit more?
Yeah. Well, Ian, you would recall yesterday, before we got to commence the cross-examination of forensic detective Thabo Mosia, the judge himself had expressed some dissatisfaction about what I would refer to as sideshows in this particular trial, and that you would recall as well that there was also an application for a special entry that Advocate Zandile Mshololo had brought before this court, in which she was basically challenging the state's what she referred to lateness of the handing over of crucial documents, including the contents of the controversial docket 375. And at some point, the judge had called all the legal representatives to his chambers, and that agreed then that Advocate Zandile Mshololo would no longer pursue this application, and instead what will then happen is that we would commence with the cross-examination of Sergeant Thabo Mosia. I think there was really a sigh of relief when that did take place, because Leanne, you would know, every time we're inside this court, there have been quite a number of sideshows and applications and statements that have been made that have really delayed the crux of, what everyone wants to know, what exactly happened on the day that Senzo Meyiwa was killed. So with the cross-examination commencing, and the continuation of it this morning, I think there really has been a sigh of relief in terms of perhaps we're starting to get to the actual nitty-gritties now of the actual trial itself, and not the other sideshows that have been taking place.
Indeed, we can only hope. But I mean, obviously, there's the major sideshow that's also going to be taking place, and that, of course, is Advocate Tefo now going for Kelly Khumalo's lawyer, as well as EFF's Julius Malema. So, I mean, there's still that sideshow to contend with.
Well, that's right. I mean, just before we commenced with the trial itself on Monday, that's when we got information. In fact, police had confirmed that Advocate Madisela Tifo, who is no longer part of this trial, had opened cases against Magdalene Munsami, who is the lawyer for Senzo Meyiwa's then girlfriend Kelly Khumalo, as well as EFF leader Julius Malema. He basically says that they'd made defamatory statements against him, and that he wants to challenge this. I know that police had contacted Magdalene Munsami. In fact, she did confirm it in an interview with SABC News that police did contact her. And the EFF also, in response to that, slamming Advocate Madisela Tifo, saying that he had made this trial about himself. It was no longer about Senzo Meyiwa. And he basically wanted to consistently hog the headlines and steal the spotlight away from what was actually happening inside this court, or getting to the bottom of what happened on the day that Senzo Meyiwa was killed. So I think we're really hoping at this stage, and I think in conversations that I've had with Senzo Meyiwa's family, who lost a loved one in this matter, they're certainly hoping that there aren't going to be any more sideshows or delays in this matter. This cross-examination will be wrapped up, and perhaps we would be able to get to the next witness as well.
Indeed. Chriselda, thank you. Thanks so much, as always, for following and reporting on this case and keeping us updated as to what is going on. Not the easiest case to be reporting on, we must say, with all of the delays and, as you heard from Chriselda, sideshows that we need to contend with. To get to the meat of what's actually going on is what we need to focus on. So Chriselda Lewis, they're out there in Pretoria, and will be bringing us that trial as always.